What's going on, everybody? My name is Eric.
My name is Tom.
My name's Zach.
My name's James.
And we are the Nomads, and we are here to bring you another podcast. It's been a while. We missed the last one due to the 12 Days of Christmas special. It got to be a bit time-consuming to edit, so didn't get one done. But we are back here once again to go into some pretty hefty NFL news. The playoffs have started, and there's some very interesting teams in both conferences that have made it. Some teams that didn't quite make it, and we're going to go ahead and talk about those. But first off, we have our favorite topic to discuss, Tom's overreactions. So Tom, do you want to get us started with some?
Alright, boys, it's time for some overreactions once again. This time it's the NFL Playoff Edition. So, the first overreaction, without Carson Wentz in the picture, the Vikings easily become the first team to play a Super Bowl in their own stadium.
Yeah, I can say that's not an overreaction. Carson Wentz was the difference maker, but yeah, I think the Vikings could absolutely, I wouldn't say easily, so I guess that part's an overreaction, but I do feel like the Vikings are definitely the favorite in the NFC now. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think it's an overreaction. I think the Vikings are playing the best football in the NFC outside of the Eagles when they have Carson Wentz. The only challenge I see is maybe the Panthers. Panthers defense could probably slow down the Vikings' prolific game-managing offense. But other than that, I think the Vikings got the best shot.
Man, what about those Rams? What about them? Sean McVay. They're fast on offense and defense. That is an overreaction. Gurley is going to take them to the NFC Championship, and they're going to be going to the Super Bowl. Sorry, Viking fans. You guys are screwed.
Okay, I'm going to say is not an overreaction, just because I think the Vikings, without the Eagles, without their leader, I think the Vikings have the clearest shot. The Rams could pose a threat, but I just think that young offense is going to get torn apart by the Vikings. This horrific presence on defense. They're just so prolific on that side of the ball. So I think the Vikings defense will carry them past a Rams team. Second overreaction. No one has a shot at downing the Patriots in the AFC.
Definitely an overreaction. The Patriots aren't unbeatable. They've got a defense that's kind of middle of the road. It fluctuates, very inconsistent. They still have Tom Brady, and that's enough to win them all the way to the Super Bowl. But Jaguars have a good defense. The Steelers, they seem to play up and down to their competition. The Chiefs are still there. The Chiefs have already beat them once, and the Chiefs might not be playing as good as they did early in the season, but they're also not playing as bad as they did in the middle of the season. So the Chiefs are still there. If the Chiefs win their game, they go back to Foxborough to play the Patriots again in their home, where they've already won once. So, I don't think they're unbeatable.
Eric, name the quarterbacks who have beaten Tom Brady in the playoffs in the last 5 years.
Flacco, Manning, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, you got me. That's all I got. I'm sure there's others, but I can't think of them.
So since 2012, the only quarterbacks to beat the Patriots in the playoffs are a quarterback who's not in the league anymore and a quarterback who's not in the playoffs anymore. Yeah, I don't think that's an overreaction at all. I think the Patriots now have an easy road. I mean, Brady in Foxborough has proven to be damn near unbeatable. Good luck to any AFC team that wants to beat them.
What I love is talking about the Patriots in the playoffs. Home field advantage. Oh, yes. With an injured Antonio Brown. With some no-name teams like the Titans, the Jags, and the Bills. Kansas City's garbage and has always been garbage this season. They got lucky the first few weeks. So, yes, the Patriots are going to be in the Super Bowl again.
James, what would be your answer if the Ravens were in the playoffs?
That I hope whoever played him knocked him out.
That's all I needed, buddy.
I'm actually going to say this is not an overreaction. I think they definitely have the easiest path, even easier than last year, and they made the Super Bowl last year. So, unless the Jaguars ascend to godhood, but they have a really good defense, but that defense is young and they don't have any playoff experience. So, maybe not this year, but maybe next year the Jaguars can make a run at this thing. But unless the Jaguars ascend to godhood, the Patriots aren't getting knocked out of the playoffs. I think one team can be locked into the Super Bowl at this point. And finally, the third overreaction: the Tennessee Titans are the worst playoff team in the history of the NFL.
I don't know. Seattle made it 7-9 one year. That was pretty remarkable. But yeah, just based on the way they're playing, the way their stats are looking, I don't know how Tennessee got here. I have no answers at all as to how they got there. So yeah, I'll give it to you. Not an overreaction.
I think it's a slight overreaction. I think the Bills are a little bit worse. Two words come to mind: Nathan Peterman. Bills defense is unknown. It's unknown quantity. I can't think of two starters on that defense. Maybe not even one. I don't know reaction.
Yeah, I agree with Zach. The Bills got lucky by playing the Dolphins twice and the Jets twice, and there's 4 of their possible wins. So yeah.
I'm gonna say this is not an overreaction. I think the Titans, like, stat wise, how the hell did they even make the playoffs? Like, I don't even how they strung together so many wins. By all accounts, there's a lot of teams that are just better than them. The Chargers, the Ravens. I mean, I don't know how they got here, but they got here. We'll see if they can make something happen. But I don't think they will. The Bills are pretty bad, but they have no receiving core. But Tyrod Taylor somehow still managed to keep them in games. And if LaShawn McCoy does not play, then they're going to get bounced really. Like, they're going to get embarrassed. But if LaShawn McCoy plays, they have a relative chance at doing something. But yep, that's it for playoff overreactions. Thank you guys for playing the game.
So, going off of that, regardless how you want to slice it, it is still the playoffs, and in the playoffs, anything can happen. Any given Saturday or Sunday. But who do you think in both conference is the most dangerous team? Not necessarily the best, but for example, James, you're a Patriots fan. Which team are you most worried about, if any? Or do you, or are the Patriots the most dangerous team? But what do you think is the most dangerous team in both conferences right now?
The most dangerous team in the AFC is the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the reason is what I just said earlier, is that they're young and they're hungry to prove themselves. That lack of experience could screw them over in the playoffs, in the playoff atmosphere, when they have to go up against these people that have playoff experience. And that might affect how deep they can make a run. But like I said, if the other side of that coin happens and they play to the level that defense has played all season, if they get after the quarterback, especially if they play Brady, they start sacking Brady, get him uncomfortable, and maybe get a couple of interceptions, maybe a pick six, the Jacksonville Jaguars could down the Patriots. But that defense needs to play to the level they've played at all year. They don't need to get freaked out by the playoff scenario. And Blake Bortles needs to not be Blake Bortles for once in his life and just be a game manager and not, screw over his entire team by throwing a pick in the fourth quarter or something like that. But if Blake Bortles can just be an Alex Smith for that team and that defense can just let your defense take care of things, you know what I'm saying? The Jacksonville Jaguars could be a very dangerous team. In the NFC, I'm going to have to go with the Vikings. Their defense is really good. I mean, there's not much else to say about it. And Case Keenum, although he's not, people seem to be very scared that he's going to not perform in the playoffs. He's gotten them through the season. A very tough season when you lose Sam Bradford after he started the season playing very well. And you come in with this guy, Case Keenum, who has done nothing in his career, and suddenly he's throwing 50 yards to Stephon Diggs for a touchdown, and it's like, wow, where did this guy come from? So great talent discovered here by Zimmer and the Vikings, and I think Case Keenum, unlike Blake Bortles, will be able to carry his team through some games when and if the defense drops the ball a few times. I think Case Keenum's good enough to get his team through. Can you imagine if this team still had Dalvin Cook? How much of a threat there would be? That's like insane to think about.
Or Sam Bradford.
Or if Sam Bradford never got injured and he kept on that hot streak, exactly. And yet here they are still with the second seed and the chance to play in their home stadium in a Super Bowl, and that's just extreme motivation. They have a great defense, and Case is on top of his game. So I think the Vikings for the NFC and Jaguars for the AFC.
I'm going to agree with you on the NFC. I got the Vikings because their defense is, based on Pro Bowl voting, criminally underrated. They have probably 3 positions where they have a top 3 player at that position, which is just insane to think about on one defense. And Case Keenum is playing out of his mind. Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen are just playing out of their minds as well. I mean, they're just hard workers. One thing I love about that team is that those receivers, not only do they catch every single ball that comes to them, they are precise route runners. They are not physically better than any other receiver they match up with on the opposition, but they just have such crisp route running, and they know where to be. The AFC, I was leaning towards the Jaguars, but I'm going to have to go with the Chiefs because when the Chiefs defense is playing lights out and you got Travis Kelce and Kareem Hunt going how they go, and Alex Smith hitting the bombs that he's been hitting this year, unlike the rest of his career, I think if they start off the playoffs right, get a solid win against the Titans, I think they could ride that hot streak out.
Okay, for the AFC, it's kind of a tie for me. Because I want the Rams, because I believe in the Rams, I believe in the young coach, I believe in the young quarterback and Jared Goff. On the other side, I believe in the Saints. I believe in Drew Brees. He's had the experience. The defense is young. They're stepping out. They're fast. And they're carried by 2 running backs. You can't stop 2 running backs that are getting 100 yards each per game. What is that? That is impossible to stop. And, of course, on the AFC side, you already know what it is. It's going to be Patriots. We just got to get Hogan healthy. We got to get White. We got to get Burkhead. We got Gillislee healthy. Get our 3 running backs. Get Hogan back. We got to get Malcolm Mitchell off IR. We're unstoppable. We went 0 for 11 on 3rd down with 7 DBs. That is what I love. Small ball. Force him to throw. Stop the throw. I love it. I just love it.
So I kind of agree with Tom and Zach in the AFC. I definitely think it's Jacksonville. I think they get the easiest matchup in terms of first round playing the Bills. For them anyway. And then if them and the Chiefs both win, they play the Steelers, who are probably playing either with a hobbled Brown or without Brown entirely. They've already beat them once with Brown. So, obviously early in the season, but it still happened. I think Jacksonville matches up really well with the Steelers. And if it becomes the Jacksonville versus Patriots AFC Championship game, that's going to be really exciting to see. On the NFC, I think the Saints are probably the scariest team. Obviously the Vikings are favorites, but the Saints, I've never seen a Saints team, like James said, I've never seen a Saints team that was led by not 1 running back, but 2 running backs. I can't remember the last time Drew Brees had a running game to begin with. Now Drew Brees doesn't have to do everything. It's still Brees back there. He can do it if he needs to. So their defense is playing spectacularly, and it's one of those things where everything seems to be falling their way. I mean, the butt interception that Lattimore had, it's just when the ball is rolling your way, you can carry that momentum right along with it, and I think the Saints have that. Kip did send me, our friend Kip is a Vikings fan, he sent me a bunch of stuff with the Vikings. We pretty much hit every topic he mentioned here. One thing to note that Zach mentioned, their running game. Without Dalvin Cook, they're still averaging 120 yards a game, which is insane because everyone thought that we had thought Dalvin Cook was going to be the killer for that team, and instead they just picked the ball right back up and kept running with it. Zach mentioned Diggs and Thielen, and the other thing is home crowd. There's a good chance Philly loses their first game, and that means it's literally all the way through the Super Bowl in the Vikings in Minnesota. That's insane to think about, that Minnesota, a dominant, easily favored team, could be playing the Super Bowl in their hometown. It's remarkable to think about, but I do think the Saints are probably the most dangerous team to them. So, moving on to the second topic for the NFL. What team currently in the playoffs, although I'm pretty sure we all can agree on this one, what team in the playoffs are you most shocked about making it? Not just based on how they played this season, but where we had them ranked before the season began, going back to the first podcast, etc. And what team are you most shocked missed the playoffs?
Okay, going by conference or?
Just in general. Just in general.
Okay, in general, what team I'm most shocked about making the playoff? Well, the Titans. We've already mentioned this, and I think it's because everyone had them so highly ranked at the beginning of the season, and then they played like that, and they still somehow make the playoffs, stumble into the playoffs somehow, and I think they're going to lose pretty badly when they play, if I'm being honest here. So I'm really shocked that the Titans somehow made it into the playoffs, despite all their stats and stuff, like all their weak stats and all that. The team I'm most shocked I missed it are the Los Angeles Chargers. For a couple weeks there, it really looked like Phillip Rivers had this team on track, and they're blowing people out. They're putting up numbers. They were scoring touchdowns. They looked really good, and then they lost the one game that they needed to win, and that was to the Chiefs. The one game they needed to win. And hey, I got to hand it to the Chiefs too. They won the two games they needed to down the stretch. They beat the Raiders and they beat the Chargers. They fended them off really nicely. But man, Phillip Rivers wants that game back, because this was his chance to, maybe sneak into the playoffs a little bit and be that underrated, that underdog team. And I really think the Chargers could have made a run at this thing. They have a lot of talent on that roster, but it wasn't meant to be, clearly. Unlucky.
I think the most surprising team to make the playoffs for the totality of the season would have to be the Rams. I mean, just 100% turnaround. It's amazing what a coaching change can do for you. Mr. Mediocre finally got out of his job, and Sean McVay took over, and now the Rams are rolling. Most surprising team that didn't make it, I'd probably have to go with the Chargers. I mean, that defense is a defense you do not want to play in January. When you have two edge rushers who get to the court, I mean, it was a defense that reminded me of the Broncos' front four with Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, where they got Bosa and Gordon, man. I mean, or Melvin Ingram. It's just crazy, man. There's two pass rushers who had 10-plus sacks this year. Bosa's going to be a good one. Really, really, really good one. But that's who I got.
The Shaka. For the NFC, it has to be the Rams too, because like Zach said, it was a complete turnaround. And I knew McVay could do it, and I'm proud they actually did it. Because Rams, I love it. I love that football team. AFC, it has to be the Bills. They finally did it. 17 years. I was at a bar while they made the playoffs. It erupted. There were people crying. There were people on the bar. There were people running everywhere. There's one guy I know. He's getting an Andy Dalton tattoo on his ass now because the Bills made the playoffs. So, yeah, it was an exciting time for the Bills.
So for me, most shocking team to make the playoffs, I'm actually right on board with Zach here. I thought the Rams. I predicted them to do well. Under Sean McVay, he was, offensive coordinator for us, and I knew he could do it. But just the amount of turnaround, I mean, I knew the Rams were talented, and they just needed a coach that could get them in the right direction, and Sean McVay's done it. But I did not predict them to be one of the top teams in the NFC. With Carson Wentz going down, I would put the Rams at number 2 and as the second best team in the NFC right now. shocked that missed it. I'll be honest. I'm going to go Seattle. And I know I've been renowned as the Seattle hater amongst us, but I'm shocked they didn't make it. I honestly figured they were going to find some way to get that last spot. But, you know, when it comes to being, they just, so many injuries on the defense, and that's been what's carried them. And Russell Wilson, he couldn't will an offensive line that didn't want to be an offensive line to the playoffs. And, you know, it's going to be really, really almost depressing now that Seattle's basically going to crumble, because I think I read a report that all 4 of their headliners on defense are predicted to not be on that team next year. 2 of them due to retirement. No one knows what Earl Thomas is going to do, and Richard Sherman being injured. They're predicting he might get cut. I think they'd be stupid to do it, but that's the tweet I was reading the other day. So Seattle missing the playoffs is very bizarre for me, and Seattle, you know, having a really rocky future is really surprising to me as well. So going on to the third, kind of piggybacking off of that as far as teams that missed the playoffs. What team that missed the playoffs do you think has the fewest holes that they need to fix in order to make it into the playoffs next year?
I'm actually gonna say this is actually a tough one. It's between 2 AFC West teams. It's the Broncos or the Raiders for me. So I'm just gonna talk about both of them. The Raiders, I don't know what the hell happened this year to them. They didn't lose anybody. They didn't gain anybody either, but they didn't lose anybody. And Amari Cooper just had a really bad year. Derek Carr was supposed to come back from this injury and be exactly the way he was, and he really just wasn't the way he was. And you know, it's really sad with the you know, the move to Los Angeles, the move to Las Vegas looming overhead, and now their coach has been fired. I think the Raiders' job was one of the best jobs in the NFL right now that is open. All these rumors about John Gruden coming back, and maybe that's what they need. Maybe they need a guy like John Gruden. But yeah, they have. I expect them to be back next year. They need to maybe pick up some pieces on the defense and free agency and the draft. Maybe get some more studs on the defensive side, and they can be right back to where they were last year. So not much to fix there because they have a good offense and all that. So, and as far as the Broncos go, they still have one of the best defenses in the entire league. They're still scary. They started dropping the ball near the end of the season just because I think they all got discouraged, and you can't really blame them for that. But all they really need is a quarterback. You know, and maybe there's a Kirk Cousins out there. If Alex Smith leaves the Chiefs, maybe there's an Alex Smith out there for you. Maybe there's a Case Keenum out there for you if the Vikings decide to go back to Bridgewater or get another quarterback in free agency. You know, there's options there for the Broncos to get a good, consistent quarterback back behind center. And if they do that, keep the pieces they currently have, I think the Broncos are right back in the thick of the competition. So 2 very disappointing AFC West teams this season, but there's not much to do to turn them around and be right back in the middle of the competition.
Go be a homer, and I think the Ravens, man, if we can just get... I would kill for Joe Flacco to have a receiver like an A.J. Green, and Antonio Brown, or Josh Gordon, who are considered each of them to be a top 10 receiver in the league. And it just so happens that they're all in the Ravens division, but the Ravens had a lot of injuries. We at one point in the season had 3 or 4 more players in IR than any other team in the league. We get Jimmy Smith back next year. We get Marshall Yonda back next year. We get our rookie first-round draft pick, Marlon Humphrey, another year under his belt. I think we can make a run at it. We just got to get some reliable targets for Joe Flacco, man. I mean, he showed down the stretch that he can attempt to carry a team, but you can only carry a team so far when you have 9 drops in the last game of your regular season. So I got to go with the Ravens.
You already know. 5-11? Nah. San Fran's about to go playoffs next year. Jimmy Garoppolo. Get him some more weapons. He went 5-0 as a starter. Their defense is young and talented. I'm loving it. Jimmy Garoppolo is going playoffs next year. He's going to go undefeated probably for first 10 games at least. I'm calling it. That's my early prediction of the next season. Seattle's wiped out.
James, I need to calm down, okay?
Nah, Seattle's wiped out. Like you said, Seattle's wiped out. Arizona doesn't have a quarterback. They can worry about the Rams,
So they got to play the Rams, though.
but Garoppolo has shown he can beat the Rams because they didn't sit their starters on defense, and the Rams still took that L.
I do know one thing. Jimmy G is going to be a very wealthy man in a few months here.
Oh, yes, he is.
Yes, he is.
Max contract.
So, for me, a team with the fewest holes to fix, God, it really is hard. There's a lot of teams that I think are right on the cusp. Redskins need health in depth. Ravens just need another receiver for Flacco to have someone to throw to. James might have a point there. The 49ers, they're definitely a team that I think could do something. But I'm going to go kind of away from the grain here, and I'm going to say Detroit. And the reason I'm going to say Detroit is because they were pretty middle of the road in most categories. And they weren't really ranked at the bottom of anything. But Matthew Stafford is still a very dominant quarterback. He can win you games. There was a stretch where it seemed like you wanted them to have the lead in the fourth quarter so they could blow it because they're going to come back. If it's a one-score game in the fourth, they're coming back. But, they need a little bit more consistency. I'm interested to see who they bring in as a head coach because I think that's all they really need is a head coach that can work with what they have and get them to take the next step. The draft is vital for Detroit, but I do believe that Detroit is one draft away and maybe a couple of free agents away from contending, more so contending than they did last year in the NFC North. So, of course, we can't end the NFL segment without making official playoff predictions. We're going to make these Sons of Guns all the way up to the Super Bowl. Don't got to go too in-depth, mostly just who you think's going to win. Obviously, we're going to have one more podcast before the Super Bowl to talk more about it then, but who do you think is getting there and who do you think is not?
Okay, so for the AFC, Kansas City over Tennessee, curb stomping. Tennessee does not deserve to be there, and Kansas City is just going to roll to a win. Jacksonville is going to beat Buffalo because, if LaShawn McCoy doesn't play, it's going to be easy. If LaShawn McCoy plays, I still think Jacksonville wins, but, on the other side of the conferences, give me the Rams to edge out the Falcons. That's going to be the game of the weekend, by the way. If you don't watch any of the 4 games, watch, if you're only going to watch one of them, watch Atlanta at Los Angeles because that's going to be a great game. But Rams edge out the Falcons. And then I'm going to complete the home team's sweep. I think the Saints are going to beat the Panthers. I think the Saints running game is too much to handle. So that sets up Kansas City at New England, a rematch. But I don't think it's going to be the rematch the Chiefs fans were hoping for. Patriots roll to a win. And then Jacksonville will be at Pittsburgh. And this is the bold prediction because I think Jacksonville will defeat the Steelers. I think Roethlisberger throws 3 interceptions in that game. And I think Jacksonville defeats the Steelers. Other side, Los Angeles will have to go to... help me out here, guys.
LA would play the Vikings if it's a home
LA
game.
okay. Yeah, LA at Vikings and New Orleans at Eagles. Oh man, rest in peace, Eagles. The Eagles aren't going to beat the Saints, not with Nick Foles. Especially coming off of beating a division rival in the wild card, the Saints are going to roll to a win. And then give me the Vikings to upend the Rams and end Sean McVay's big run trying to make the Super Bowl. But that team will be back, so keep an eye on them for next season. And, of course, that sets up a Patriots and Jaguars game. That's going to be really exciting. I don't think the Jags have it. I don't think the Jags have the experience to go into New England and steal a win from Tom Brady. So, Patriots back in the Super Bowl. Yay, woo. And then the Saints at the Vikings, which is going to be a fantastic game. Battle of offense versus defense there. I think the Vikings edge them. And the Vikings go to the Super Bowl and go to the Super Bowl in their own stadium. And that leads us to Vikings against the Patriots. And because it is a home game for the Vikings, I say the Vikings take down the Patriots in a very close game and win the first Super Bowl in franchise history. So that's my bold predictions.
I really just got the Jaguars playing the Patriots in the AFC Championship. I don't think the Steelers can do anything to the Jaguars, nor do I think the Chiefs. The Chiefs can't catch fire. It'll just be a matter of their defense stepping up. Their defense has been kind of lackluster towards the end of the season. And then, obviously, I have the Patriots advancing. And on the NFC side, pretty much got the same as Tom, and then I got the Vikings going to the Super Bowl. I think this could be the Vikings' first Super Bowl, man. That defense is scary. The one thing that flusters Tom Brady is having a front four that can get to you, and then a secondary that can man up and lock down the receivers. And Tom Brady's only safety blanket is Gronkowski, and I think Harrison Smith or Kendricks can give him a run for his money and rough him up a little bit during the game. So I got the Vikings winning it all.
So, the AFC side, we got Kansas City, Tennessee. Kansas City's going to win that by 3 touchdowns. Tennessee's garbage. Then you got Jacksonville, Buffalo. What beats Jacksonville? What beats their pass rush? A running quarterback. If LaShawn McCoy and Tyrod Taylor can keep that offensive or defensive line running after him the whole game, Buffalo's going to pull off that upset. I think they will. So that leads to Buffalo and Kansas City advancing. So that means Buffalo travels to New England where they're going to lose. Kansas City's going to travel to Pittsburgh, and Kansas City's going to win. It's going to go Kansas City Patriots in the AFC Championship. Patriots are going to get revenge and go to Super Bowl again. Then you got Rams Falcons on the NFC side. The Rams are going to win that handily. New Orleans Carolina. New Orleans is going to win that. So New Orleans is going to go to Philly. New Orleans is going to destroy Philly. And you got Rams and the Vikings. I think the Rams can pull off that upset. I think they can beat that defense. It's all about fast-paced offense. Got to get that no-huddle going. So it's going to be Rams, Saints. Rams are going to advance to the Super Bowl. Rams are going to play the Patriots like I've been saying all season. Patriots are going to win it all again. 3rd time in 4 seasons. You've heard it here.
Do you think the Rams can beat the Vikings, or you want the Rams to beat the Vikings?
Oh, they can. They can. They got fast-paced defense and fast-paced offense. They just got to keep that Viking defense guessing. If you can run Todd Gurley through some screens, or you can just run up the gut all day, that defense is going to be tired by the 3rd quarter.
I would not run up the gut against Minnesota Vikings defense. That's the last thing you want to do.
Before you go, Eric, I just want to say Tom Brady does not want to play the Vikings at all.
No,
I can
not
tell
at
you
all.
that right now. That is the scariest team for Tom Brady to play in the Super Bowl. He does not want any of that.
No. So here's my picks. So obviously, pretty self-aware that the AFC wildcard games are going to be unwatchable. Jacksonville and Chiefs are going to win that, sweep up that deal. On the NFC side, I think the Saints and Panthers is going to be a good game, but I feel in my heart for Drew Brees. I think they're going to win that game. I don't think the Panthers are quite as good this year as their record shows. Rams and Falcons, I thought the Falcons were not going to make the playoffs. I was kind of shocked they did. Not as shocked as the Titans, though. So I think Rams are going to win that game pretty handily. Eagles, they don't. I'm sorry. As much as I would like to see the Eagles finally win one so that we could say every member of the NFC East has a title, it's not going to be this year, not without Carson Wentz. I'm going to tell you right now, the one team in the AFC that I think matches up well with both the Steelers and the Patriots is Jacksonville. If the Chiefs don't knock off the Patriots, I'm going to be 110% honest here. I think Jacksonville might be able to do it. And solely because Zach mentioned something. The best way to beat Brady is to hit him. Hit him hard. And
With four rushers, not blitzing.
But did you see what the Titans defensive tackle said? If the game is in Blake Bortles' hands, he is going to choke. That is his destiny in life, is to choke on game-winning drives.
If the defense does its damn job, then Like, Bortles won't be in a position where
Exactly.
he has to make a game-winning throw. So
You can't stop 5 running backs. You can't.
But Jacksonville did not come up with the nickname Saxonville out of nowhere, as unoriginal as it might be. They got that because that's what they've been doing. They've been sacking the almighty heck out of people. And not only that, but their secondary has been one of the best secondaries. They've got one of the best passing defenses in the league. So I think they match up well against both the Steelers and the Patriots. I still think, obviously, the Patriots are the favorites. I don't think Jacksonville's going to win, but I think Jacksonville could win, if that makes any sense. They're not going to. The Patriots are going to be in a Super Bowl, but I think Jacksonville could do it. They're the only team in the AFC I think can do it. I mean, in other words, I don't think it's going to be the runaway like you guys think it's going to be. But on the NFC side, I think it's going to, yeah, the Vikings have it. I would love to see Drew Brees in the Super Bowl again, just because Drew Brees is by far my favorite quarterback in the league. But the Vikings defense is scary. I've watched a whole lot of their games, and I've never seen a defense that hits that hard. I mean, those are some big men on that other side. You don't want to get hit by them. And the Saints do a lot of screen plays. They do a lot of short plays. They do a lot of quick plays to set up the deep game. But you're not going to want to play short against Minnesota. And I think that's where Minnesota gets their big advantage against the Saints. And if the Panthers ever get there, I think that's where they get the big advantage is there as well. So, in the end, I'll be honest, James. I think they've got a point. I don't think y'all want to play the Patriots, and I do believe that it's going to be Minnesota. I think Minnesota's going to have the trophy this year. They're going to add one to the dismal trophy case.
You guys are you guys are very overestimating the Vikings' potential, and I can't wait for them to flop in the second round. I can't wait for it.
All right, so moving on to the NBA. We talked to the NFL for a while there, a pretty long time actually. We're gonna move on to the NBA, and we're gonna kind of, sort of, lightning round this. Real quick. So we talked about this in the last podcast, but due to the 12 Days of Christmas special, I didn't have time to edit that podcast, so we didn't really get to talk about this. For people, MVP predictions. It's kind of evolved a little bit since then. Do y'all think it's LeBron James to lose, or do y'all think it's James Harden's to lose? Let's just go ahead and narrow it down to those two. James Harden, LeBron James. Who wins it and why?
The difference I've seen, especially in the last few weeks before Harden's injury, is that LeBron's carrying his team. And James Harden, he's playing great ball and all that, but he's not carrying his team to victories. You know, they've lost several games with him in the past few weeks, and now he's out with an injury. So, but I think LeBron James has the MVP basically locked up. Yeah, not much else to say.
It's only 20 games in. I wouldn't say locked up, but yeah, for right now.
Man, you wouldn't have interjected if he said James Harden. If he said James Harden was locked in.
Yes, I would have.
I don't think he would have. Expose him.
Hashtag caught. All right. Yeah, I think it's pretty much LeBron lead dog right now. The downside for James Harden is that LeBron's second best player isn't playing right now, or he just came back in Isaiah Thomas. Kevin Love's great, but he's not a bona fide number 2 option. He's a great third piece. James Harden has Chris Paul. Chris Paul at one point was the best point guard in the NBA for a span of 3 or 4 years, and it was just undisputed. And Chris Paul plays defense. James Harden does not. Chris Paul will take away MVP votes from James Harden. LeBron has nobody on his team to take away from his spotlight. I mean, the past few years he had Kyrie to take it away because Kyrie was just a gunner. But I think LeBron's got it in the bag right now, unless somebody else tries to take it.
Yeah, it's not a debate. It's LeBron's to lose. LeBron's going to win it, and I believe that with all my heart.
Yeah, I feel unfortunate for James Harden because I feel like he should have won it the last 2 years, and someone else just barely one-upped him. And I think it's going to happen again. I think LeBron James wins this year. I think James Harden finishes second again. Depending on how Boston does, Kyrie Irving might take a few, but Boston's just playing great team ball. Which leads me to my second point here. So I'm adding a third team to this. I did it on the outline here, but I'm adding a third team to this because I did some research. Who do you think is the most complete team in the East? The Cavaliers, the Celtics, or Toronto? Because no one's talking about the Raptors, yet they sit in second place in the East, and last time I checked, we're only a game out.
Calm down. I got you. I think it's not really a battle between teams here. It's a battle between three very specific players, and that's LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and DeRozan. Who are all playing very good ball, but each of these teams has a distinct characteristic where they have a very good player leading the charge and winning games for them. And DeRozan is playing absolutely lights out right now, for sure. But I think LeBron James has better pieces around him. I think Kyrie Irving has better pieces around him. I don't think DeRozan's hot streak is going to last all the way through the playoffs. They might take some games away from the Cavs or even Boston in the playoffs, but I just don't see them making a run at the finals this year. But DeRozan has proven thoroughly so far this year that he is a player to watch. You know, he needs to be named among the elite in the NBA for what he's done so far for the Raptors. But best team between those three, most complete team, the Cavs when Isaiah Thomas gets back. Isaiah Thomas is a great player. He's going to sync up really well with LeBron James. We already saw a little bit. LeBron James can just go do his thing and have Isaiah Thomas and Kevin Love support him all the way through. So I think the Cavs are definitely the most complete team. By most complete team, I mean the most set up to support their main guy, because each one of these teams has a main guy. And it's all about the supporting cast. And I think the Cavs have the best supporting cast.
I think it's amazing the difference that DeMar DeRozan has had from last year to this year. It's amazing the difference. A player who had the best mid-range shot in the league for the past 2 or 3 years, what a difference his game makes when he can shoot a three-pointer. When teams don't get to sag off him at three-point line, when he can knock down 4 or 6 three-pointers a night, it's pretty crazy. And I think in that fact, the Toronto's playing really well because of it, but they're not a complete team just because of the fact that he's playing out of his mind. I think, like Tom said, it'll wear off. I think right now the most complete team in terms of the word team would have to be the Celtics because they play cohesive. The Cavs are very streaky when they have 2 champions by every definition of the word in Dwayne Wade and LeBron James. The Celtics do not have a champion. Kyrie was on LeBron's pretty much on his coattails for those runs. Like LeBron carried the team to 2 wins the year that Kyrie and Love were out. Then he pretty much carried the team through 7 games. I mean, everybody remembers Kyrie's shot, but like he didn't play one side of the floor for that entire playoff run. And then it comes down to whether you think it's the team that has the best sum of the parts or the best parts put together. I think the best team in terms of parts put together is going to be the Celtics. Some of the parts, once Isaiah Thomas comes back, is going to have to be the Cavs.
2 letters, I-T. Isaiah Thomas. The Cavs are complete once he gets back. That team's going to be unstoppable. He put up, I think it was 17 points last night. That's ridiculous. He's coming off an injury. You shouldn't be able to do that. Please nerf that guy. Then you have the Celtics. Honestly, I don't know anybody on that team besides Kyrie. That's how bad I don't follow basketball. But the Celtics are looking good still. I've seen some of their games. And Toronto, they're like an overreaction. They're not gonna do anything really good in the playoffs. They're just gonna be there holding up a place spot. And that's how I feel.
You know, I agree with Zach in terms of, the most cohesive team is the Celtics, but I was talking to Greg about this at work the other day. He's, a big basketball guy, a big LeBron fan like you, Zach. But he mentioned something else that I didn't think about, and that's Al Horford. Al Horford is the glue that keeps the Celtics together. He was the part last year that kept them together, and he's the part that's keeping them together this year. Kyrie Irving is an accessory to that team, and Kyrie Irving is playing the role that he needs to play for that team. But Al Horford is really the one that decides if that team is going to be good or not, as LeBron is for the Cavs. And I think because LeBron is just above and beyond the best team on the best player on the Cavaliers, he's going to lift that team up. But outside of him and Isaiah Thomas, Dwayne Wade's getting older. He can't quite do it. That's why he asked to play on the bench. And outside of those two, Kevin Love, there was question marks going around if Kevin Love really fit in today's modern NBA. So whether he, has defeated those rumors or not is to still be determined. It's still early in the season. But I say the Celtics clearly have the most complete team. But the problem in basketball is the most complete team does not always win in the end. Utah couldn't do it. In the end, you had to have that star caliber player, and that's what the Cavaliers have. I actually think if they played right now, I think Toronto would beat the Celtics in the playoffs. I'll be 100%. They won't beat the Cavs, but I think Toronto could beat the Celtics. It's just when it comes to the playoff time, does that one player step up, like Zach mentioned, like LeBron did, and carry that team? Or does the team composition offset what the stars do? And that's really what's going to determine the Eastern representative in this year's NBA Finals. Going off to the West, we mentioned it before, James Harden's injury. What overall impact? He's only going to be out for 2 weeks, so that's about 6 or 7 games. Do you think that's going to have an overlying effect on Houston? And does this destroy his MVP chances in the long run? If LeBron plays all 82 games, or the whole season anyway.
I don't think it really impacts his MVP chances. It's not going to hurt. It's not going to obviously help him because he's not playing. But I think this is actually a good thing for the Houston Rockets. And that sounds weird, but hear me out. Before Harden got injured, they lost a bunch of games in a row where Harden just went off, and they still ended up losing the game. So I think this is good in the way that the Rockets will have to learn how to play without him, and then when he comes back, it'll be like a surge, So I think the Rockets as a team need to learn how to play without James Harden because they're relying on him way too much. He has no support for what he's doing, and as weird as it sounds, I think this injury is actually going to help the Rockets in the long run.
I think his injury is twofold. One, it won't affect how their team plays because Chris Paul will step in beautifully if there's anybody that can take over for James Harden and be a percentage of what he is. I think Chris Paul can do 90% of what James Harden does. He doesn't Euro step as well as James Harden does, nor does he get phantom fouls as well as James Harden does. But I think Chris Paul can definitely step in and make them from a 130-point team a night to a 122-point team a night just from that. I think it hurts his MVP candidacy based on the fact that Chris Paul is going to show that team's not going to change much without James Harden. It is the most valuable player, and it's going to show that James Harden is fantastic. He's honestly like a Western Conference DeRozan. He just does a lot of things better than DeRozan that DeRozan can't physically do, like draw phantom fouls. But I don't think the injury is going to have much effect on the Rockets' overall success. They're going to go from world beaters to continent beaters, really.
I think Harden injury is going to help the Rockets. They're going to learn to play without him, and they're going to get better at communication without him. And when he comes back, they're even going to be better than before. That's what some teams need. When you can't score and you can't play as a team without one player, you're just hurting yourself. So you're going to have to learn to do it without him. So James Harden's injury is going to help him for these 2 weeks.
Yeah, I was actually about to say that exact same thing, James. I think this is going to help them because they're going to learn to play without him. It's going to get Chris Paul warmed up even hotter than he already was because now he's got to be the carrier. And then you plug James Harden in there, and they might go from 130 to 122. And then when he comes back, they'll be 140 a game. Obviously exaggeration, but that team is probably with James Harden. I think that team could beat Golden State. Without James Harden, with Chris Paul leading, I think that team could take Golden State to 7. So this is going to help fine tune Houston, and the second half of the season. Watch out, because that is the team to beat in the West right now. So I know y'all hate it when I mention my boys, but I was doing some research because the Wizards play absolute god awful against teams below 500. So I did some research, and ESPN, the gods of ESPN, bestowed upon me an article that was asking if the Wizards actually played down to the competition like their record seems to ensue. And when I was reading on here, I found some pretty remarkable results. The number one team that tends to play down to their competition was Cleveland. And I was not expecting that. Number 2 was Memphis. Number 3 was LA Lakers, which I'm kind of interested to see how they play up or down. But Oklahoma City was 4th, and then the Orlando Magic was 5th, which I found pretty interesting. And then Washington was number 8th, below Golden State and Sacramento. And at the bottom of the list, in terms of the teams least likely to play up or down to competition, play more consistently, was New York at the very bottom. So the Knicks play the most consistent game no matter who they're playing. Right above them was San Antonio, and Utah right above them, with the Clippers and Chicago above them. Are you guys surprised by any of these results, or what do you guys think about that? Playing up and down in competition, what do you think causes it? Do you think there is any correlation, or are these kind of ESPN grasping at random stats?
I don't know why. First of all, I don't know why the Lakers are up there. They're just bad. So, I don't know how you play up or down when you're that bad. Same thing with the Bulls. I don't know how you play up or down when you're like the worst team in the league. But whatever.
Quick to interject, Tom. It was based off of overall record. So it was based off a record. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting, I guess. But when you're losing to everybody, I guess you lose a lot to people that have worse records than you, or you lose a lot. You win a lot against people with like better records than you, since you're at the bottom of the board. I don't know.
It was based off of above 500, below 500 was the consistently chart.
It's an interesting list, and it's fun to talk about people like playing up and down to other people's level, but I think in the NBA it's a little bit different because I hate to say it, but no one really gives a flying crap about anything until the playoffs roll around. So, LeBron James, when he plays against teams that the Cavaliers should easily beat, I take it he's just like mentally not there. He's like, okay, guys, you can handle this. And sometimes they don't. He's like, oh shit, that's gonna look bad on me. But yeah, I think playing up and down to levels of opponents is just a phantom stat, to be honest. I just don't think it's that important in the long run, especially in a league like the NBA. And at least like the MLB and the NHL, you see it more because they play hard all season. But in the NBA, I don't think a lot of teams play hard all season, unless you're playing someone like tonight. The Cavs are playing the Celtics. Obviously, both teams are going at each other's throats on that one. But if like the Cavs play the Bulls, it's like who gives a hoot about that? LeBron can just kind of jog up and down the court, and they'll probably still beat them. And maybe the Bulls will get lucky and up in them, but it really doesn't matter in the long run, since the Cavs are still probably going to make the playoffs. So I think it's just a phantom stat. I think ESPN is kind of grasping at roots here, trying to find something, but I don't think it's that important nor relevant to the NBA season.
Yeah, I have to agree with Tom. It's more of it's like a pity stat, but I think it speaks to more that the NBA season is 82 games, and for a player like LeBron, who's later on in his career, he's in Lacoste mode. Like he's not in it to win 82 games and go 82-0 and goes 16-0 in the playoffs. He's in it to get to the playoffs. If that only takes 41 wins to get there, then he's just going to go for 41 wins. If that's all he needs to get the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, which is probably the case because it's the Eastern Conference in 2017/18. But I think it speaks more to the long schedule and that teams don't really care, and that when they do play good teams, they want to prove that they're on the same level. They want to prove to themselves mentally, like, hey, we lost to them by 2 points, but guess what? We lost to the Golden State Warriors, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Houston Rockets, what have you. We lost to them by a few points. Hey, we beat them by a few points. We proved to ourselves that we can play with them. That way, when playoff time comes around and you have to beat these teams 4 games out of 7, you have the mental toughness to accomplish that.
This article that Eric pulled up, I think it's one of those articles that ESPN got bored and they need to pay somebody a salary, so they paid them to write an article that doesn't really matter. So, yeah. It's one of those college papers that doesn't matter, but they want you to do it just to show you can do it. Here's a bunch of stats. Do something with them. Okay.
See, I agree with y'all in terms of, say, the Cavaliers and the Knicks being top and bottom, but for a team like the Wizards or Milwaukee or Toronto, I think it speaks a lot more. And maybe this is a stat for fans. Maybe this is something for fans to talk about and get talking, which is technically what this podcast was for, fans talking about the sports. But for me, it looks... yes, the end goal is getting to the playoffs. But the fact is, the East is a lot better than it's been in the past. And, if the NBA truly wants to be this top sport that it wants to, it needs more competition. And I think this is a stat that kind of shows that maybe there is more competition. It's a stat that the NBA can throw out there and say, hey, look, maybe these teams are actually decent. We have competition. It's not going to be the same finals 18 years in a row like everyone thinks it's going to be. It's a stat that ESPN can use to pull in viewers, but from a fan's perspective, it's infuriating to see my team play so badly to teams that are obviously so much worse than we are. And I have a friend that's a Milwaukee Bucks fan, and he says the exact same thing. It's infuriating to see Milwaukee play so bad to these teams that they're clearly better than. So, for fans like us, this is a stat that can go, okay, maybe we're not the only ones doing it. But then when you see Cleveland at the top, it kind of destroys the legitimacy of the stat itself. It gives me hope that maybe the Wizards aren't so bad against teams that are playoff competitive. I think that's the part of this that I look more at, is playing up to teams that are going to be in the postseason. Your record against the above 500 teams, I think, should be more important. And I think that's the part that this stat doesn't show, if that makes any sense. And I think that's a stat that you should pay more attention to. Playing up and down, yeah, I kind of agree with you guys. It's kind of an empty stat to an extent. So one last thing I want to talk about in the NBA. Isaiah Thomas made his return last night as of recording this. We're recording this on Wednesday. He came back Tuesday. Not playing against the Celtics. He said that he did not want to be on a minutes limit when he played them. But do you think Isaiah Thomas, and we've kind of touched on it, but do you think Isaiah Thomas is the final piece that the Cavaliers need? Or will he just be a player playing behind LeBron?
Oh, I absolutely think he'll be a player playing behind LeBron, but he's a player that LeBron needs on his team. I think Zach mentioned earlier that Kevin Love is a good player, but he's not as good as Isaiah Thomas. He's a huge piece because they gave up LeBron's co-pilot for him, and they did that to get another co-pilot. You don't get rid of your co-pilot and then not get another one. So I think Isaiah Thomas is going to slip right into that role, and he's going to do great for the Cavs. I think this is huge for the Cavaliers to get Isaiah Thomas back, and the fact that they're still in the the thick of the East right now. I think they're the 3rd seed right now. The fact that they're right there, competing for the top 5 in the East still, and now Isaiah Thomas is coming back. It's going to be huge. The Cavaliers are in a prime spot right now.
I mean, I agree with Tom. It's huge. It's really huge. They really needed Isaiah Thomas, and he plays a lot huger than his size would indicate. I think the difference is between Isaiah Thomas and Kyrie is that Isaiah Thomas had just the same opportunity as Kyrie Irving to carry a team, and Kyrie's teams were consistently lottery teams, and Isaiah Thomas's teams were playoff teams, pushing the Cavs to 4 or 5 games, 6 games some years in the playoffs. But I think that Isaiah Thomas's return is huge. He is definitely he's probably the better second fiddle to LeBron than Kyrie would be, because Isaiah Thomas has heart. Kyrie has an immense amount of skill, but he's mainly out there trying to clown on you and not actually trying to will his team to victory, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see Isaiah Thomas back with LeBron. Well, not back, but you know what I mean. It's going to be great to see in the playoffs. And Isaiah Thomas, like Zach said, he's going to be a great second fiddle. I can't wait to see it. That's all I got to say.
For me, I feel like the trade was good for both teams when it came down to it, because Kyrie Irving, I feel like, is the better leader in terms of just skill and what he brings to the table. Like you said, Isaiah Thomas has that heart. And I think that's why, in an ironic twist, it makes both teams better. Because LeBron James, like you said, Zach, needs that heart behind him. LeBron has the skill. LeBron has the talent. He needs the heart to get everybody else fired up at the same time. He has that now with Isaiah Thomas. Boston needed someone that can be a LeBron James to an extent, a lesser LeBron James, someone that can lead their team with skill and ability and scoring. It benefited both teams and made both teams better. And so far, we haven't seen what Isaiah Thomas brings to the Cavs, but if Isaiah Thomas can bring that heart to the Cavaliers, as good as the Cavaliers are playing right now, that's an entire another level that they might be able to reach. And it's going to be really interesting to see if Isaiah Thomas can bring the same heart that he had, bring that same heart that he had with the Celtics to the Cavaliers. So, finally, moving on to the last topic we're going to be talking about today. College football. ESPN got its wish for an all-SEC championship. Alabama against Georgia. What happened in the first round to get Alabama and Georgia to this level? Oklahoma and Clemson both choked. Clemson a whole lot harder than Oklahoma. We were talking, obviously we didn't mention much in the last podcast, but in private we were talking about how Alabama was a borderline player to get in. And now they're in the championship. Did this prove that Bama deserved it, or did they just take advantage of a Clemson team that had a really, really, really off night? In all honesty, no bias towards either one, but because Saban just has a way of getting to this title game. But
first of all, I want to start off by saying Georgia-Alabama is going to be a great game, and you know it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't you deny it, Eric. Say it.
It's a home game for Georgia, too.
No, I want to hear Eric say it. Say it's going to be a good game.
No, I won't.
Clemson had a really, really bad game. I'm pretty sure 100% Ohio State or UCF would have beaten them the way they played that game. They did way too many mistakes. They threw way too many interceptions, lost the ball too many times, gave Bama too many opportunities. I honestly think that they weren't beating anyone the way they played that night. But nothing to take away from Bama. They came out and they played really well. They have heart. And they ended up upending a Clemson team that definitely did not play the way everyone was expecting them to play. As far as Oklahoma and Georgia goes, that was going to be a close game. They're pretty evenly matched as teams. Mayfield can't play defense, so, what are you going to do if you're an Oklahoma fan? Their defense needed to step up, and they simply did not. As far as championship predictions, give me Georgia in a close one. I'll say Georgia by a field goal. It's also a home game for Georgia, like Zach mentioned, so I think Georgia wins by a field goal. It's going to be a great game, though. I'm looking forward to watching it.
I think it shows that Alabama deserved to be in the top 4. Alabama has all year played like a top 4 team regardless of their schedule. I think Clemson also did have an off night, especially their offense. But I mean, what Alabama does is they play defense a lot like how Seattle does. They have 4 pass rushers, maybe 3, maybe 5. They don't vary much from that. And then they just man up on the outside like, all right, we're the bully. Out bully us. We're not going to do any funny defense. We're not going to do any complex defense. We're going to play straight up mono defense. You want to beat us, you got to kick our ass. How we play football. That's what they want you to do. And that's what Alabama excels at. And Clemson couldn't do it. And Alabama's offense came to life. I think this speaks more to also that Alabama had a lot of players get healthy towards the end of the season. They had a lot of linebackers get injured, which is Alabama's strength on their defense is their linebackers. And a lot of the linebackers came back healthy. I mean, there's some that are out for the year, but the linebackers that are healthy got a month of practice to get ready for this game. Yeah, I think it speaks to Nick Saban being so good with a month off from having to play a game and getting to teach his players and get them to drill down into their 2 next opponents. So my prediction, I got Bama by 2 scores in the championship, man. I don't think Georgia's defense can hold off Jalen Hurts for too long, and I think, or Bo Scarborough for that matter. And good luck scoring on Alabama's defense, man. Honestly, they don't do anything complex. They just punch you in the mouth and wait for you to punch them back, and they punch you back. So, all power to Georgia. Thankfully for them, it's a home game. So we'll see how it goes. It's gonna be a great game.
Yeah, what happened the first round of the playoffs? Baker Mayfield can't play defense too. Then you had Clemson with a first-year quarterback against the Alabama defense. Yeah, that never ends well. Just ask Watson. Then you got Alabama, Georgia in the championship. It is a home game for Georgia, but I always pick a well-coached team over a little star team or a team that's hot. So Alabama will win it based off Nick Saban alone and his coaching strategies.
So, for the national championship, it's really hard to pick against Nick Saban. I've never really liked him much to begin with as a person, which is why I've never really liked Bama. But it's really hard to pick him against the national championship. But I do feel like Georgia's offense can do a lot of damage against that defense. Nick Chubb and Michelle were the 2 that picked apart Oklahoma. So I do believe that Georgia has a really good chance against Nick Saban. I think they can pull it off. I'm going to go with Georgia. It's hard to pick against Saban, but I am going to go with Georgia. Very close game, not 2 scores. I think it's going to be less than 7, differing between these 2 teams. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a last-minute field goal or a last-minute touchdown to win it, but I do believe that Georgia is going to win it. I'll even go as far as say I think this game might go to overtime, but I do believe Georgia's going to come out on top. So, the last topic that we're going to be talking about today is the draft class, the quarterback draft class of Sam Darnold, Rosen, and Baker Mayfield. So, Darnold played like absolute garbage against Ohio State. Now, he did come out and, skeptics have already jumped on it, saying that he wasn't putting in 100% effort due to a desire to protect himself. Now, I was trying to find the article that said that, and I can't find it now, but I do remember reading it on Twitter, I believe, was where they had interviewed him, and he said that he kind of took the game off, if you will. Didn't put in 100% effort. Rosen didn't even play in his, and Baker Mayfield came out short. I've heard a lot of skepticism of Baker Mayfield, which is ironic because I thought he played the best out of the 3 of them, obviously. I thought he would have done a lot to boost his draft stock, and everyone's saying that he did a lot to ruin his draft stock. Did the 3 of them hurt their draft stock in these bowl games, or do you think they're pretty much exactly where they were?
The short answer is no. The long answer is no because Darnold has played well all season. Just because he quote unquote took a game off at the end of it doesn't really mean anything. Ohio State has a great defense, and I think they just played well, and they smothered Darnold. And at some point, he was like, "Screw it, why am I trying so hard?" So I mean, that's just whatever. He still had some good plays in that game. He had some good throws, some good rollouts, some good plays off the play action. So I don't think he hurt his draft stock as much as you would have thought. And I also want to point out that Josh Rosen came out onto the field and warmed up, and he was actually dragged into the locker room by the medical staff and told that he's not playing in this game. So he really wanted to play in that game. So I don't want anyone out there to think that we're criticizing him for not playing because he wanted to protect himself. He really wanted to play in that game. So he was suffering from a concussion still, and the medical staff just said, "No, you're not playing in this game." So Rosen, I've already said this. If he wants to hop Darnold and be like the number 1 overall pick, he has to have a hell of a combine. His team isn't that great around him at UCLA, so his combine is going to really highlight those individual skills. And speaking of individual skills, Baker Mayfield played out of his skull. He does play a little bit scared. He never tries to throw it into tight windows for receivers. He always needs his receivers to get wide open. That could lead to him holding the ball too long. But all three of these guys, what scouts look at is not winning college football games. What scouts look at is what they do, like what their skill set is, their intangibles. How does he deal with this situation? How does he deal with that situation? USC getting kind of blown out by Ohio State isn't going to. It's not an end-all be-all. It's like, oh, clearly you can't win the big game. You know, you can't act like they're the only player on their teams. You know, Josh Rosen, like, well, he didn't play, but if Josh Rosen played and he lost that game, I don't think I would take away anything from him either. Baker Mayfield played very well. His defense let him down, and his special teams let him down. But as far as individual skill sets go, I think all three of these guys have a great body of work, and honestly, all three of them, I think, are going to have good NFL careers. I think all three will be NFL starters next year. That's my bold prediction. But, yeah, that's the long answer.
Who would you want the Redskins to have if Kirk left?
Mayfield.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd rather have Mayfield or Josh Allen. Josh Allen's someone you didn't mention because, Josh Allen... You're talking about, like, does losing games really is it detrimental to someone's draft stock? And Josh Allen's another great example of this, where he played on a really, honestly, terrible Wyoming team. But you look at his skill set, and it's like, wow, this guy's probably the most pro-ready quarterback, ready for the NFL out of anyone in college. Yet he's getting a bad rap because he plays for Wyoming, who is. I don't think Wyoming's ever been even relevant at all on the college football landscape. So why does USC losing to Ohio State suddenly hurt Darnold's draft stock when how badly Wyoming played doesn't hit Josh Allen? I think it's kind of a double standard when your team's supposed to be good and all that, as opposed to not good. But I think honestly all four of those guys will have great NFL careers. As a fan of the Washington Redskins, I would like to see Mayfield or Allen on a roster if Kirk Cousins does indeed leave, to answer your question.
Yeah, I think I don't think they did anything to hurt themselves. I mean, it shows year in and year out when players do what Eric doesn't like them do and sit out bowl games. It shows that this is not their exit interview. If you were to make this into like applying for a job in the NFL, their exit interview is ultimately the combine and interviews with teams and things of that nature. Teams use how they play in college football as a barometer, more like an aptitude test to see if they're even worth their salt, worth looking into. And then once the combine comes, they determine who's actually worth it to take a risk on, to trade up to the first overall pick, trade up the second overall pick, like teams did on Winston golf. So I don't think it hurt them at all. I think all of them are going to be great quarterbacks in the NFL. This is a crazy, crazy good quarterback class. I dare say it could challenge the class with Marino and Elway and them, but a little too early to say that. But these guys are – it is amazing how horrible the classes have been for quarterbacks the past few years. how very, very talentless they are at the top with maybe one or two guys. But this year, you legitimately have top flight talent throwing the football.
So for me, Zach mentioned it. I absolutely hate it when players take their bowl games off. I understand why they do it, but for me, if bowl games are really this important test, like people try to make them out to be, and they are relevant, as y'all say, you shouldn't want to sit them out. And that's why I have huge respect for Josh Rosen for wanting to play in that bowl game, and I've lost a lot of respect for Darnold for taking his off. Baker Mayfield obviously was in the important game, the one that mattered, the playoff game, and he wasn't the one calling the plays. He wasn't the one dropping passes like they were. He wasn't the one running the ball when they decided to run it. He wasn't the one playing defense when they were on defense. So I'm not upset Baker Mayfield put up crazy stats. I didn't watch the first half, and I heard he looked very shaky in the first half and played much better in the second half. But that's all it sometimes takes in the NFL. You can have a bad half and still win the game. So, for me, Rosen, huge respect. Darnold, lost all respect. If Cousins leaves, you mentioned if Cousins left, I would rather have Baker Mayfield. I don't want Josh Donald. Or I don't want Sam Darnold. I don't want Darnold. I don't want to see him in a Redskin uniform because I lost all respect for him in the way he played that game. If the rumor is true and he did take that game off. But for me, I still think Baker Mayfield and, like Tom said, Josh Allen are the best two in the class. I don't think Mayfield hurt his draft stock. Rosen, I think, helped it. Darnold hurt it. That's kind of my summary of there. But last thing I want to end this podcast off on, UCF. A lot of stuff we could talk about UCF. Do you think they were truly snubbed? We talked about taking games off. The rumor is that Auburn took the game off because they can't give UCF any credit. But do you think UCF was a true snub? Obviously, Bama's in the championship, so maybe not. But do you think UCF has a case? And ultimately, and this is not trying to rehash an old argument, this is a legit question, do you think UCF kind of opens up, I guess, a pro to an 18 playoff? Not necessarily saying that, we should have one because of them, but if you're going to list pros and cons of an 18 playoff, do you think a UCF or an Ohio State could be a pro for that 18 playoff?
First things first, I think the word snub is kind of weird to say when you're dealing with bowl games. But moving on to UCF, I honestly, if I was part of the committee, I would have definitely given UCF a chance. They were kind of like the wild card option. It made me a little upset that they wouldn't even mention. It was like, it has to be either Ohio State or Alabama. And I'm like, well, these guys over here are undefeated. And they've been playing great. And then they upended Auburn. So they could play against SEC competition, if you will. So, and Clemson had an off night. I honestly think UCF could have beat them the way they played. And we could have had UCF in the national championship game against Georgia. And that would have been interesting. Now, Bama fans and Ohio State fans would have cried about it. But who cares? It would have been fun to see a UCF, kind of like the Boise State upending Oklahoma or something like that. So if I was on the committee, I would have given UCF a vote. I probably would have been the only one because they just don't like them that much. I don't know why. They have an explosive offense.
Yeah, they put them at number 12.
They have a really good. But the problem is, I was talking to someone the other day about this. The problem with the committee is that they never even put them in the picture. The disrespect shown to UCF this season. They were never in the top 10 until the very last poll came out.
They didn't even finish in the top 10.
I guess they're undefeated. We have to put them up here now. But it was it's sad that they were never even given the opportunity to be the sixth team in the nation. Why weren't they up there with the Wisconsins or the Alabama who played frickin' UL Monroe halfway through the season? Talk about strength of schedule. It's don't BS me, committee. So I think UCF definitely could have been a wild card at that fourth seed, but the committee would never accept that. But props. I love what they're doing with the declaring themselves national championships. Or national champions, rather. I think it's a really, really cool gesture. I want to see how the NCAA will react to that.
I think if it was a 16 playoff, they would have got the 6th seed and had a shot at a 3 seed. Like, who was a 3 seed? What was it?
Georgia.
Georgia? Yeah, they would have had a shot to knock off Georgia. I think that would have been a great game. But as far as top 4, you're going to have to be a dominant power or group of 5 team to get over a Power 5 conference team. And UCF just wasn't that. They went undefeated, yes. Not all wins are created equal, no. But it's going to take a lot for a team to get the top 4. Top 6, I think if it was top 6, the committee would have gave them strong consideration because naturally the committee thinks, oh, Power 5 conferences. That means there has to be a 6th one so we can put the 6th best team in there outside of the Power 5. So they could do that kind of argument. But UCF got disrespected a little bit in being ranked 12th at the end of season poll by the committee, and that is very disrespectful. That's the committee saying, hey, all you group of 5 teams, get better or just don't think yourselves as highly. I really like that UCF considers themselves national champions. They went undefeated. They have every right to do so. They didn't beat the best to earn that, but if they feel that way, then they feel that way. If I feel I'm 7 feet tall, then damn it, I'm 7 feet tall.
Yeah, I think UCF got snubbed. I think they should have been in the playoffs. A great example of why they should have been is Boise State, 2007 Fiesta Bowl. Went up against Oklahoma. They had the chance to beat the big boys, and they did. In amazing fashion. With trick plays and what they did best is sticking to their guns. I wanted to see UCF against like Alabama or Oklahoma or Georgia. That would have been beautiful. Because they would have stuck to their guns and would have did well. And probably won.
Yeah, I my biggest issue with it is the freaking 12th rank. I mean, come on now. Like, give them 10th. Give them top 10. Yes, their strength of schedule was far away from Alabama. I'm not saying they should have been ranked 4th just by going perfect, by going 12-0. But I think them beating Auburn, I don't care what you say if Auburn was taking the night off or not. Them beating Auburn is huge for me. And it shows they should have been at least top 10, top 8, top 7. Like you said, Zach, I agree with you. If it's 6 teams, they make the 6th seed. I think it's Ohio State and them as 5th and 6th. So, you know, it sucks. And if you're a UCF fan, man, I feel for you. 13-0, wear that badge with pride. Hang that championship banner. Screw it. Like, y'all deserve it. 13-0. But when it comes right down to it, you got to play better competition. And I think, you know, one of the cons that we mentioned for a 6 or an 18 playoff that we mentioned before was that teams were going to take it easy. And they were going to basically they're going to basically be all Alabamas, where they pepper their all out-of-conference schedule with cheese balls. And UCF showed that with a 14 playoff, you can't do that. Because that's what UCF did. Now, of course, Bama got in there by playing an overrated FSU team, and that was it. But regardless of Alabama, everyone else had really high-quality high-quality teams on their out-of-conference schedule, and they won. So, if UCF wants to be there next year, they got to schedule at least one good team to beat, not Memphis. And then maybe maybe they'd have a better argument at that point. But unless anyone,
To be devil's advocate here, Florida State was preseason number 2. How are they to expect that DeAndre Francois was going to get season-ending injury in the first drive?
well, I mean, for me, preseason ranks are kind of skeptical. I personally thought FSU was overranked, and I said that before the season ever began. When I saw them ranked 3rd, I was like, what? No way! They lost their best player in Dalvin Cook. I didn't think they were 3rd anyway. I don't think they would have been in the playoffs even if he didn't get hurt. That's my own personal opinion, and I said that before the season ever began. Obviously, I can't be proven right.
But it's a counterpoint to you saying that Alabama doesn't schedule tough games. That was a tough game that they scheduled. First game of the season. It's not like they opened the season against Louisiana Monroe. They opened against Florida State on a big stage, neutral field, said, hey, mano a mano, let's play this out.
Yeah, I can see that. I see where you're going. They didn't expect it not. They didn't expect that game that FSU to go down the way they did. But you know, I don't know. I would like to see a team like Alabama. They shouldn't have any cupcakes on their schedule. That's my opinion. If you're as good as you say you are, why do you have to play these tune-up games? Why do you have to play these Louisiana Monroe games? I don't know. That's my personal opinion on that.
Because a 9-3 Auburn team didn't make the playoff. That's why.
I mean, I'll be honest. They played Mercer the second to last game. Is that worse than starting the season with Mercer? I think it's worse than. I think it's worse.
You know why they don't schedule tough games every single week? Why you have to have some cupcakes? Because you have Auburn losing 3 games, not making it, when they were probably a top 3 team at the end of the season. You have Ohio State getting blown out by Iowa, who's a conference opponent. Not like they have a choice to schedule them, but that completely drowned their playoff hopes. You don't want to go battle to. You have to have some lightweights in there. Yes, Mercer is a freaking lightweight of the lightweights of the lightweights, but the argument that you need to schedule tough games every week, that's a flawed argument.
I just think if you're as good as Alabama thinks they are, or is, or however you want to put them, then you should be able to schedule stiffer competition. At least, I mean, like you said, Mercer's at the bottom barrel. No offense to Mercer fans, if there's any listening. I don't think there is. But if there is any listening, no offense. But your football team's not at the same level as Alabama. I mean, they could have scheduled ODU, and that would have been better than Mercer. That's, you see what I'm saying?
Before Mercer beat Duke, nobody probably knew that was a school.
Yeah, I agree. That's true.
They didn't know. They didn't know it was a school.
I know. It's like where the hell are we going, guys?
But
it's like, it's the school's name is Mercer.
I thought that's what we begged for. But so if anyone has any closing remarks before we sign off here,
Vikings going to get exposed.
They're not going to get exposed. The team that's going to get exposed is the Rams, in my opinion.
the team
When they
that's
play
exposed
the
is the Patriots.
Jared Goff is going to get smacked in the mouth by Anthony Barr.
Blake Bortles is a god.
Blake Bortles needs to ascend to godhood. He needs to go sacrifice something, throw something into a volcano.
You know what every Super Bowl team has? Elite pass rushers. Who's the Patriots' elite pass rusher?
James
Gronk.
Harrison.
Oh, sorry.
James Harrison, 2 sacks already.
That's Grandpa Harrison to you, buddy.
Respect your elders, kid.
Alright, guys. Well, this has been the first podcast of 2018, the rebranded podcast. We're no longer Team Betrayed. We are now 60 for 60, even though I believe we went way over 60 minutes here. But the rebranded podcast, one last note before we go for anyone that didn't see the vlog I posted, which has suddenly blown up. But after the Super Bowl, we're going to be cutting this back to one podcast a month. We're going to be adding a gaming podcast to the mix. That's going to be kind of in circulation. We'll have sports one week, and then 2 weeks later we'll have the gaming podcast. So we're going to have one more podcast in 2 weeks before the championship games. I have a small podcast, like a really short Super Bowl premiere podcast planned for us. That's going to be like maybe a short 10 to 15 minute one, just strictly to talk about the Super Bowl. Following the Super Bowl will be once a month. So, with that being said, I think that's all I got. So, unless anyone else has anything else they'd like to add before we sign off.
I got a bold prediction. Jason Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, 3rd team All-NBA.
Yeah, real quick. Actually,
Oh my God.
Let's not.
Let's stop, Eric.
Yeah, let's stop where we're headed. Yeah, let's stop there. So, we'll see you all in 2 weeks. And until then, peace.